Ahoy! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with a quick video to talk about June's Wargames. For those who are coming into this for the first time, Wargames is an event format that sees you compete using decks built from a narrow selection of cards. Like Champions and Blitz, you'll play a string of matches and earn rewards based on your progress. The level cap is set to the cap for the previous league, so the cap therefore is 11 for Masters, 10 for Diamond, and so on. That this is still the case is slightly disappointing, as I'd like to see the level caps matched to those used in Blitz and Champions, especially as here you're being directed to use units that you may not have leveled. This time around you will be playing as GDI with a tech-heavy selection, so let's have a look at what cards are possible. Now, as usual, all commanders are allowed in this event. Now in here, the only barracks unit we have are missile squads. From the War Factory, we have the Pitbull and APC. In the helipad, we have Orcas, Hammerheads, and Orca Bombers. And then in the Tech Lab, we have Deep Breath, Disruptors, Juggernauts, Kodiaks, Mammoth Tanks, Sandstorms, Titans, Wolverines, and Zone Troopers. That's a bit of a wild selection again. The full Tech Lab and the heaviest air with Pitbulls, APCs, and Missile Squads to round it out. Now, when looking at these suggestions and considering different decks, I like to first consider the various different openings and then go from there. Now, the only possible openings here, other than Harvesters of course, are Missile Squads, Pitbulls, and possibly Orcas and APCs. Now, I have no idea why anyone would ever open APC, as it stimmies your own economy and does nothing other than brick up a pad whilst your opponent can send multiple units at it or build up their own economy, so I'll discount APCs as an opener, as should you. That leaves us Orcas, which again are a really bad opening idea, Pitbulls and Missile Squads alongside Blind Double Harvesters, which you will probably see a lot of, as many people will look at this, build tech and assume that everyone is, especially in the lower leagues. Now, all of these openings you'll notice are countered by Missile Squads. Now, not to mention that there is shockingly little anti-infantry. Ultimately, that comes down to APCs, the first you're likely to see, with Wolverines, Juggernauts and Disruptors much later on. As such, Missile Squads do seem like the best option for an opening. Scout a route that's close to where your Harvester will go and only build a Harvester once the Missile Squads are about halfway, once you've seen a decent portion of the map and know that you're going to be fine against rushes. Now, a Missile Squad in the way of an Orca or Pitbull does actually do decent damage, and a second one sent to your Harvester will mop up what's left of any on rush. Of course, if there is no rush, scout their Harvesters and harass with missiles, but don't forget about the pads. Now the next question is, what's next? Well, believe it or not, I would strongly suggest War Factory. APCs are great at holding pads, even against tech units. They'll hold the line for days and require 2 units to deal with effectively, or a single Orca Bomber, which we do have here, but we'll come back to that later. APCs clean up enemy missiles and will sit comfortably on the pads. I'd expect a fair amount of air presence with Orcas and Orca Bombers in the mix, which also means a lot of Hammerheads. Pitbulls are great against the Hammerheads and do surprisingly well against Orcas and Orca Bombers if you can catch them reloading or you move your Pitbulls in pairs. This then brings us to the helipad. Here, my first thought was just to take all 3 aircraft and be done with it. Hammerheads are definitely a good idea, as they'll deal with Orcas, Orca Bombers, and Kodiaks nicely, but then I considered the Orca and Orca Bomber are probably overkill. At most, you're likely to build 1 Orca, use it, and then constantly have the economy for Orca Bombers, rendering the Orca, for further points, useless. I'd keep the Orca Bombers personally, as even with their extra cost, they take care of all ground units and are brutal against most tech. With a bit of support, they'll easily take out Sandstorms or Zone Troopers. Now, you may decide that the ability to build an Orca before an Orca Bomber is something that you want in your deck, and I think that that's viable. It's cheap, it's fast, and it blasts through most of the tech you'll see out there. But I consider the Orca slot a wild card. Now, normally I'm not a fan of 4 building decks. It's a lot of upfront costs not being spent on units, but in this environment, you should be able to comfortably get away with it. As such, you can swap out that Orca for tech. Now here I'd go with either Zone Troopers, Sandstorms, or possibly even Disruptors. Sandstorms do well against many of the lighter ground units and will deal with most of the air nicely. Zone Troopers fill a similar role, though a little less mobile. The Zone Troopers have few counters in this card pool outside of Disruptors, and that's exactly why Disruptors are my third suggestion. The core deck does struggle against massed infantry, and whilst I don't expect much in the way of infantry, the Disruptor is able to hang back and keep the pads free of any that come your way. In a pinch, their base damage, despite the recent nerfs, isn't too shabby either, and provides a nice little distraction for your opponent. So let's look at the why nots. Juggernauts are a bit slow, don't deal with ground tech like Titans, and can't touch all the aircraft that'll be flying around. Juggernauts, as much as I love them, are a bad idea here, as they just don't really counter much. Wolverines were a unit I did consider for the deck, but they're just outclassed in almost every way. For anti-air, they won't really kill anything that the Hammerhead or Pitbull won't, and the only infantry to deal with are missiles and zones. Wolverines don't beat zones, and APCs and Orca Bombers will deal with missiles. Titans, like the Juggernauts, just don't have all that many things to counter. If we assume that there's plenty of air and missile squads, that there are plenty of units around that the Titans won't kill, and in fact, many that counter it. Sure, they're thick boys that could hold the pad for a while, until an Orca Bomber starts prowling. Better options. Next. Kodiaks have one major downside in this event, and that's that there's going to be a decent amount of air flying around, and so a decent amount of hammerheads. Kodiaks are even thicker than Titans, it feels like sometimes, but not against hammerheads. Mammoth tanks could actually work for you in the lower leagues where pad pressure isn't so much of a thing, especially if you have them at the level cap, but higher up the prevalence of the Orca Bomber is going to be problematic for mammoth tanks, especially in a situation where you'll likely only get to build one. If you're a mammoth tank enthusiast, there'll be plenty of pad stalling going on, but I just think they get countered too easily by the main selection going on here. Finally, we need to look at commanders. I'm going to suggest Strong Arm here, but again, let's do the why nots first. Solomon, flat out, is too expensive. You're going to be wanting units on those pads, and the Ion Cannon just isn't great with so many expensive units in your own deck. Sure, every blast of it will do a massive amount of damage and likely trade well for its cost, but what's the point if you can't then build a unit to take the empty pad? Lang or Jackson could work and only don't get recommended, as I just think Strong Arm is going to be better. Strong Arm's turret is the cheapest anti-infantry option in this wargames and works as a great body blocker against enemy ground tech. And so there we have it, a final suggestion of Strong Arm leading missile squads, Pitbulls, APCs, Hammerheads and Orca Bombers. The 6th unit is then one of your choice. I would personally recommend either Orcas, Zone Troopers, Sandstorms or Disruptors. As usual, let me know your thoughts though. What deck are you running? What are you expecting to happen? Leave a comment below with the deck you're using, then come back after the event and let me know how you got on. Now for more C&C Rivals tips and tricks, check out the rest of my channel with tons of content designed to make you an even better commander. Then come join us on the Gaming Galleon Discord where we spend all day chatting about Rivals and other games. A big shout out to my Patreons, your support keeps this channel going. Alright crew, well that just about wraps things up here. Happy sailing, and see you on the battlefield.